They know that you're one of these very rare people who can see them. So you need to help them.
What if they don't want to help?
I don't think that's the way.
M. Night Shyamalan's 1999 classic film, The Sixth Sense, is still talked about even after all this time. The film is an iconic thriller that revolutionized the cinematic landscape, all while becoming a cultural phenomenon that would stand the test of time. This cult classic had a riveting narrative that had everyone on the edge of their seat. It starred the legendary Bruce Willis and Haley Joel Osment, and together they brought the iconic story to life, earning the film 6 Academy Award nominations. There's no doubt about it, The Sixth Sense is a cinematic masterpiece, but behind the haunting story are weird facts behind the scenes that you probably didn't know about. Number 20. Haley Joel Osment had a legendary audition. At such a young age, Haley Joel Osment was already a powerhouse, and it showed in his performance in the film. At the time he auditioned, he was only 10 years old, and even then he knew he had what it took to land the role. When Haley Joel Osment walked in for his audition, he walked in like he owned the place. He wore a neatly knotted tie that gave off a confident aura about him. After asking for 30 seconds of silence, he got into character as he turned from the wall with tear-stained cheeks and delivered his monologue with an authentic, raw, and childlike dread that left everyone in the room speechless. Everyone was frozen in time after his performance, and the casting director, I. Kaufman, developed a soft spot for him and a need to protect him. At the same time, Shyamalan tried so hard to hold back his tears. After the audition ended, the official search for the character Osment auditioned for, Cole, was called off. There were no other children who were able to deliver the line as thought-provoking as Osment did. He had a certain level of authenticity that wouldn't rely on any special effects. He also delivered the vulnerability and strength that the character Cole needed. Osment's level of sincerity and emotional precision created the foundation for his entire performance, and Shyamalan was so impressed that he later framed the tie in a shadow box in his office as a cherished moment. Number 19. Bruce Willis starred in The Sixth Sense as part of a settlement with Disney. A few years before The Sixth Sense was released, Bruce Willis was set to star in another Disney film called The Broadway Brawler. However, there were a few unfortunate events that led up to the creation of this film. Creating this Disney film was a challenging process. Bruce Willis wasn't only starring in this film, but he was also producing it. This meant he had the right to make decisions during the process of making the film. So he made decisions such as firing most of the crew, including the director, less than 3 weeks into production. This didn't go down well with the higher-ups. In fact, the chaos of it all forced Disney to abandon the movie entirely, and they lost a whopping $17.5 million. Of course, Bruce Willis wasn't going to be let off the hook after such an outrageous loss. So to make up for it, Willis signed a 3-picture contract with the studio, in which a portion of his salary would go back into covering Disney's losses on Broadway Brawler. Bruce essentially had 3 films he needed to star in as part of the settlement. The first film was Armageddon, the second film was The Sixth Sense, and the third was The Kid. Through The Sixth Sense, he earned $10 million, and by the time he had cashed in on all 3 films, he had also gained more success as an actor. Number 18. Michael Cera auditioned to play Cole. It's weird to imagine a world where Haley Joel Osment did not play Cole in The Sixth Sense, but it could have easily happened if Osment didn't knock it out of the park with his incredible audition. Turns out, a familiar and famous actor auditioned for that very same role back in the day. The actor was Michael Cera, known for projects like Arrested Development. Michael Cera revealed that he had auditioned for the role of Cole when he was 10 years old. He confessed that he did not understand the film's central concept at the time, so during his audition, he played the scene in an upbeat manner instead of the emotionally intense manner it required. He recalled a scene where Cole is crying and slides a penny to Bruce Willis's character, but he played it in an upbeat way, not emotionally. He stated that he had no clue the movie was about seeing dead people and that this wasn't mentioned in the breakdown. After seeing the film, he thought back to the scene he read for his audition. The scene where Bruce Willis says, "I can't be your doctor anymore," and Haley Joel Osment starts crying and slides the penny over to him. According to Cera, that was a very emotional scene, and I did not do it that way. He stated in the 2009 interview with Esquire, "I did it upbeat. I said some magic's real, some magic," very optimistically. Number 17. The red is a hidden language. The director of The Sixth Sense, Shyamalan, and the cinematographer Tak Fujimoto created a secret visual code using the color red. It's not a literal language, but rather a symbolic language where red objects or clothing in a scene suggest a connection to the supernatural or moments of intense emotional conflict. The red objects were a subtle signifier of when the paranormal world was invading the living. There were red objects such as a crimson doorknob, a lone red ball, or Cole's wax saint statue, all of which weren't just props. They are cinematic Morse code that prepares you for the drama before you consciously even register the threat. This wasn't an easy language to create. The team conducted 15 dye tests to find the perfect shade of red. They also had to ensure that it would pop against the film's deliberately underexposed cold blue palette. This was a brilliant use of the color red by the director. He wanted it to indicate the presence of ghosts, or moments where the worlds of the living and the dead intersect, and it did just that. This understated technique trained the audience's subconscious, and it proved that one single color can deliver haunting chills faster and more effectively than any cheap jump scare tactic ever could. Shyamalan perfectly made use of red to highlight specific moments and enhance the film's atmosphere as well as storytelling. Number 16. Bruce Willis was kept completely in the dark. To preserve all the shocking twists and turns of the movie, the studio went through great lengths to keep things secret, even with the star of the film, Bruce Willis. Bruce was given a script that was missing the final 10 pages, just to make sure he didn't know what the end had in store. The actual ending was a password-protected digital file called The Vault, and it was only accessible to a few people. The director and producers of the film ran a tight ship, taking all necessary measures to keep the ending a secret. Even crew members were forbidden from discussing key plot points like wedding rings or hospital monitors near Willis. During automated dialogue replacement sessions, Willis even recorded placeholder lines to mislead sound engineers. His genuine shock at the first screening was the exact reaction Shyamalan wanted. Leaving Bruce Willis in the dark when it came to the major twists of The Sixth Sense continued until after the end of the filming process. Willis has stated that the revelation of his character's demise in the film was a surprise for him, even though he knew the script's secrets. Even with the twist, Willis remained fully committed to the role, even training himself to use his non-dominant hand to embody the state of his character further. Overall, because the script was structured to reveal the twist in one go, it was a challenge to shoot scenes without revealing too much. Number 15. I See Dead People nearly didn't make the cut. Can you imagine the film without its iconic line? Well, it was almost cut out of the film entirely. Before the film premiered, it underwent the typical process. Marketing surveys labeled the line as potentially cheesy, and the studio executives were determined to cut it out. However, Shyamalan wasn't having any of it, so he fought hard to make sure it was not cut out. He argued that the line had a quiet, understated delivery, and that was what made it so haunting. To change the minds of those who wanted to cut out the line, he played real audio of children describing nightmares in flat and eerie monotone. The room fell silent as he played the clip, and eventually the line was saved. It went on to become one of the most quoted lines in cinematic history, and it proved that a simple, whispered phrase had the power to deliver a louder impact than any wordy dialogue could. The fact that the iconic line was almost switched out for a more extended version is haunting, to say the least. The final version, with the line intact as seen in the movie, focused on the emotional impact of Cole's confession, and it also focused on the connection between Cole and Malcolm Crowe. Without the line, The Sixth Sense wouldn't have had the same impact, as it became one of the most memorable lines in film history. Number 14. Donnie Wahlberg had a massive transformation. While he was only in the film for about 10 minutes, it is a weird fact that Donnie Wahlberg had to go through a considerable transformation to play Malcolm's tortured former patient Vincent. The transformation was massive, and the fact that he wasn't in the film for a long time makes it even more of a big deal. Donnie Wahlberg really committed to his character, and to portray Vincent accurately, he lost 43 pounds in just 5 weeks. According to Wahlberg, he remembered that Knight had told him this scene had to kickstart the movie, so Danny tried not to think too much about the burden and the responsibility. Instead, he just tried to honor the script and stay in tune with what he needed to play the part. In his own words, he said, "I thought if I was in that room standing across Bruce Willis and Olivia Williams and hadn't suffered and gone through some theatrical situations before I did this scene, how am I going to bear my clothes, never mind bear my soul? So that's just where I went." His explanation proved that he had to go through the methodical route to prepare for the production. He moved to New York and stayed in a friend's apartment with no money and no credit cards. He would fast for a couple of days at a time, eating only vegetables and chewing gum all day before walking the streets. When he arrived in Philadelphia, he spent the night sleeping in the park and went through a really crazy process. Number 13. The script almost got a studio. President fired. When M. Night Shyamalan finished writing The Sixth Sense script, he didn't just sell it to the first person who walked by. Instead, he attached some pretty big stipulations and added a high-stakes price to it. He didn't just let studios casually browse the story. He said that if they wanted to read it, they would have to agree upfront to the minimum bid of $1 million, and he had to be attached as director. At the time, Shyamalan wasn't a relatively well-known filmmaker, but he believed so much in the story that he was willing to risk his career for it. When the president of production of the Walt Disney Studios, David Vogel, read the script, he was so impressed that he bought the rights to the script for $2.25 without corporate approval. He wanted to avoid the bidding war, but he ended up facing the wrath of Disney for his rogue decision-making. They asked him to restructure his contract and give up some of his presidential power. When he refused to do this, he was fired in July 1999, just weeks before the film hit theaters. Ironically, The Sixth Sense went on to become a massive hit, grossing over $672 million globally. Before this happened, Disney had so little faith in the film that they sold production rights to Spyglass Entertainment while retaining distribution rights and only 12.5% of the movie's box office receipts. Number 12. M. Night Shyamalan's deleted cameo almost changed the whole tone of the film. If there's one thing Shyamalan is known for, it is his cameos. In The Sixth Sense, he initially had a much bigger and much emotionally intense role that the audience never got to see, while his final cameo in the released version is a brief appearance as Dr. Hill, the pediatrician who questions Cole's injuries at the hospital. His original scene, which most of the audience didn't see, was completely different and very disturbing. In the deleted version, Shyamalan played the role of a suicidal pharmacy clerk. The scene was so much darker and disturbing, and it showed his character at a more emotional breaking point. This scene was intended to show how Cole was sensitive to all those around him. It was meant to highlight how Cole could sense people's pain, even if they weren't ghosts. However, after filming, Shyamalan realized that the scene wasn't exactly what the film needed. It risked overshadowing Cole's journey by shifting the focus from the main emotional message of the film. He was also, in large part, unhappy with his acting, so he made the tough decision to cut it out entirely, and he opted for a more minor cameo that didn't distract from the story at all. While this decision wasn't the most major, it still showed how Shyamalan's instinct as a filmmaker came before his desire to make a cameo. However, he still gave himself another chance and has since popped up occasionally, Hitchcock style, in all of his films. Number 11. Bruce Willis learned to write with his right hand. To ensure that he didn't give away the massive twist that Malcolm Crowe was dead all along, Bruce Willis went to great and impressive lengths, like learning to write with his right hand. In real life, Bruce Willis is left-handed, but in the film, he was asked to do everything right-handed. You might be wondering why, and that is because a wedding ring on his left hand would have been a big sign that something was odd. If viewers had noticed even the tiniest detail, like the fact that he wasn't wearing a ring after the pivotal scene where he was shot, it would have been a dead giveaway that his character was no longer alive. Shyamalan and the rest of the crew were set to make sure that even the littlest inconsistencies, such as a missing wedding ring, were tightly kept under wraps. So instead of writing left-handed and risking the camera catching the lack of jewelry, Willis practiced using his right hand. It was a minor detail, but it was also a brilliant one that thrived on subtle misdirection. This is just one example of how far filmmakers are willing to go to make sure the big twist isn't revealed before its time. Bruce's performance was a paramount part and necessary to seal the deal of the illusion. He had a distant and introspective aura all through the film that felt like grief, even though it was something much darker. Most viewers missed this detail the first time they watched it, so it's interesting how that level of subtlety makes watching it a second time more satisfying. Number 10. There were clues in Malcolm's wardrobe. A critical part of making films is the clothing, and more often than not, clothing is rarely accidental, especially when it comes to mysterious stories like The Sixth Sense. For this weird fact, if you pay close attention to Malcolm Crowe's wardrobe, you will find something strange. He wears some version of the same outfit throughout the film. His whole outfit, a blue shirt, maroon sweater, and brown coat, looks like what he wore the night he was shot. This wasn't just a random, lazy costume design choice. It was a significant, intentional, and even symbolic clue planted by the director to foreshadow Malcolm's demise. The point was that Malcolm's passing meant he couldn't change his clothes, and he was stuck in that moment forever. However, this outfit subtly changes throughout the film. Sometimes he loses the coat, and other times he doesn't have the sweater. These little changes keep the viewers from ever even noticing, but they serve as a visual metaphor for his ghostly status. This wardrobe trick aligns perfectly with how ghosts are usually treated in films. They exist in some kind of purgatory, unaware of their condition, repeating routines, and unaware that the whole world has moved on without them. The fact of it is, the clues were hidden in plain sight, and that's why it's even more brilliant to discover. The wardrobe choice played a massive role in being a misdirection and also a revelation. Number 9. I See Dead People almost gave the film's biggest secret away. I See Dead People is a line that was instantly iconic among viewers. People quoted it for years, they whispered it in the same dramatic fashion, and even parodied it for the time to come. However, during early screenings of The Sixth Sense, this same line almost derailed the movie's biggest secret. Turns out, producer Frank Marshall was genuinely worried that Haley Joel Osment's haunting delivery, followed by a deliberate slow zoom into Cole's face, might tip the audience off that Malcolm was one of those dead people. To him, it felt as though the camera lingered on just a little too long, almost as though it was yelling at the audience to pay attention, thereby leading viewers right to the big twist. So he suggested that the scene be altered or trimmed, but Shyamalan was certain in his vision, and he made sure that the scene was left as it was. Surprisingly, the test screen audiences didn't notice what was being implied, so the scene was left alone. Even with the famous line and the cinematic emphasis in the scene, most viewers were blissfully unaware of what the scene meant. So the scene was left alone, and it is a wondrous thing that the film was so bold, yet it got away with it. The audience never really caught on to the big twist, even while the truth was being whispered to them directly. Without this line, the film might have lost one of its most iconic and chilling moments. So fortunately, the line didn't reveal the biggest secret of all. Number 8. The soundtrack almost ruined everything. This is the weirdest fact of all, and in hindsight, it could have ruined everything. Imagine what it was like walking into a music store in 1999, and this time, you're eager to buy the soundtrack to The Sixth Sense before even seeing the film in cinemas. So you get the soundtrack CD, flip to the back to read the track list, and there's a song titled "Malcolm is Dead." This was almost the reality because while great care was taken to ensure the major twist at the end was protected, less care was taken when it came to the soundtrack's track listing. The final track of the James Newton Howard score was called "Malcolm is Dead." Although the soundtrack wasn't available until a few weeks after the film's release, it would have spoiled the movie for anyone who checked out the CD in a record store before heading to the theater. This is a strange little footnote in the movie's history that could have changed everything. Everyone involved in the film had to keep the secret locked down, but something as small as a track title could have ruined it all. It's even weirder because the title wasn't intentionally careless. It was just a reflection of the emotional climax of the score. Thankfully, The Sixth Sense was fortunate enough to have dodged that bullet, and the twist was intact, leaving the audience shocked in the end. Number 7. Bruce Willis was the life of the party. When you think about The Sixth Sense, your mind immediately wanders to the brooding atmosphere and the emotional tension. But things were a bit more lighthearted when cameras weren't rolling, and that was all thanks to Bruce Willis. Willis was known for his sense of humor and his charisma on set. He made sure to keep the mood high even though the film itself was rather dreary. He would throw parties for the cast and crew, and he would even act as the DJ for the adults during late-night get-togethers. The most memorable part out of all this was when Bruce Willis decided to give a very young Shyamalan his first-ever hangover. According to Shyamalan, Bruce would jokingly give him small glasses of alcohol and call them candy. At the time, the director was in his 20s and relatively inexperienced with alcohol. So, in an effort not to look uncool in front of his star actor, he would take the drinks, only to wake up the next morning in a state of complete regret. Shyamalan now looks back on those moments and laughs about them. He recalls them as an unofficial initiation into Hollywood. This story is the kind of behind-the-scenes story that adds a layer of familiarity and humanity to a film that otherwise shook a lot of people to their core. Willis was able to create a sense of balance. He provided humor and a sense of camaraderie that made the intense filming process bearable. Number 6. There is a deleted hospital wing scene. One of the most disturbing scenes of The Sixth Sense actually never made it to the final cut of the film. In a Reddit AMA, Haley Joel Osment revealed that there was originally a terrifying moment set in a hospital, one that showed Cole walking through a wing with mutilated, disfigured ghosts. According to Osment, this scene was filmed in a long and narrow corridor that was made to look like an abandoned hospital ward. He stated that the ghosts were scary. Some were missing limbs, and others had open wounds, and they all tried to reach out to Cole as he walked past silently. Most of the terror of the film lies in what you don't see, and this scene would have pushed that theory to the side to make the movie more traditionally horrifying. However, Shyamalan decided to cut out the scene because it felt too intense, and it moved the movie away from a psychological suspense to a more traditional horror film. The Sixth Sense was never about cheap scare tactics. It thrived on subtlety and emotional storytelling, and the deleted hospital scene didn't fit the bill. According to Osment's description of the scene, he states that there is a deleted scene from The Sixth Sense where I look out the window of the hospital and see an entire wing with horribly disfigured and mutilated people standing in each of the dozens of windows. I think Knight wisely cut that out because we end up having a movie that isn't too gory, and your imagination, which is the most terrifying force at work, takes over. Number 5. Mischa Barton's sister screamed during post-production. With over 2 decades since the film's release, most of the cast have admitted that they didn't realize how scary the movie was until they saw it for themselves. One cast member who gave insight into this point was Mischa Barton. She was just 13 years old when she played Kira Collins, the ghost girl who appears vomiting under Cole's bed, a scene that left audiences surprised and shaken. While the scene was scary on screen, it also had a similar effect during post-production. For Mischa Barton, the moment she realized how terrifying it was when she stepped into the ADR booth during post-production. She said, "I had my little sister in the room because we went into this studio in New York to do the ADR, and she just literally flipped. You know how you're not supposed to make any noise in ADR?" She screamed at the top of her lungs. My mom was like, "Oh my God." She had to take her outside. My sister was like, "That's the scariest thing I've seen." This experience was so intense that crew members reportedly paused the session to make sure that the young girl was okay. This incident was further proof of how scarily realistic Barton's performance was. For Barton herself, it was a proud moment. She was able to convey a raw emotion and horror that even her own family was terrified of. To this day, Kira's scene remains one of the most disturbing moments in The Sixth Sense, and the fact that it was able to scare someone during post-production shows how much of a talent Barton was as a child. Number 14. How they captured Cole's breath. It will weird you out to know that one of the eeriest effects in The Sixth Sense wasn't CGI, it was real. When Cole sees lifeless people, one of the most important visual cues is his breath turning icy white as it appears visible in the air as though he's suddenly surrounded by freezing temperatures. Instead of adding this in the post-production stage, the director, Shyamalan, insisted on doing it the old-fashioned way. According to Osment, they would drape a huge plastic sheeting over the sets and then pump in cold air, bringing it below freezing so you could see their breath. There was a limited time that they could be in there because it was so cold, and most of the scenes had Osment in his underwear. Shyamalan also explained it as he said, "CGI at the time was not perfected to the place where I felt comfortable that it could do breaths. Osment wasn't acting. It was cold, and you could see the physicality on his skin and the way he was shivering. And even now, with CGI, I might do it the same way because of what it makes actors do." Going the old-fashioned route was pure genius because it worked perfectly. When viewers see the white puffs of breath escaping Cole's mouth, they instantly can tell that something is wrong and that something from another world is near. It is a subtle yet powerful visual that sticks with you even after the scene is over. Number 3. The Sixth Sense might have been filmed in haunted sets. Many of the interior scenes in The Sixth Sense were filmed in an old convention center in Shyamalan's hometown of Philadelphia. During the time of filming, the center had been decommissioned, and the location was perfect because it had long, echoing corridors and a vintage architectural style that gave the film a well-rounded yet scary aesthetic. According to some of the cast members, the frightening feeling wasn't just on camera, it was also felt in real life. Osment described the set as big, empty marble hallways, almost like it had the same vibe as The Shining. He also stated that he believed JFK gave a speech there during a campaign in 1960. He described it as very old and ornate, featuring cavernous marble stairways that descend deep into the ground. He claimed that the empty spaces gave him the creeps, especially when walking alone between scenes. Misha Barton, who played the ghost of Kira, also had the same thought process. She believed that the location was genuinely haunted. While filming her scenes, she said she often felt watched or cold, even when the air conditioning wasn't working. She wasn't the only one. Other crew members reported strange sensations or hearing unexplained noises during late-night shoots. Number 2. Toni Collette wore a wig. When Toni Collette came in to read for the role of Cole's mom, Lynn, she had altered her appearance in such a way that Shyamalan was worried he would never be able to convince Disney to cast her. At that time, Shyamalan had seen a film Collette had starred in called Muriel's Wedding, and he was impressed by her. To make sure that didn't happen, Shyamalan made the bold move not to show the audition video to the studio because he was worried that they would be concerned about her appearance. She had just wrapped her previous film, which required her to shave her head. By the time auditions for The Sixth Sense came around, her hair hadn't grown back and she was still bald. Shyamalan chose not to show the audition tape to the studio. Instead, he advocated for her behind the scenes and spoke about her incredible acting talent and emotional range. He told them that he wanted to cast the woman from Muriel's Wedding, and then Bruce Willis backed him because he loved the film. In the end, they got to cast her without the studio seeing the audition, and Shyamalan felt so lucky. As for the hairdo she has in the film, it turns out Toni is wearing a wig throughout all of The Sixth Sense. Shyamalan admitted that they didn't even have a wig, so the wig was from Velvet Goldmine. Number 1. Toni Collette experienced some paranormal moments. In real life. While filming in Philadelphia, Toni Collette, who played Cole's overwhelmed mother Lynn, found herself shaken by some unexplained moments off-screen. According to the actress, while they were making The Sixth Sense, she had a couple of weird things happening. In the hotel room where she was staying in Philadelphia, she started meditating a lot. Then she would wake up at night, roll over and look at the clock, and it was always a repeated number. It would be either 1:11, 3:33, or 4:44. That really started to spook her. At first, she thought it was nothing, but then it began to scare her even more, the more it happened. Collette tried not to jump to conclusions. She never claimed to have seen ghosts, but she did find the repetition of those late-night times to be a bit too specific. These 20 weird facts about The Sixth Sense prove just how brilliant the film truly was. From casting choices to paranormal experiences in real life, every part of this film feels like a new reason to obsess over it. The Sixth Sense will forever remain one of the best films in cinematic history, and it continues to haunt us even after all these years. Which of these facts was more surprising? Share in the comments. If you enjoyed hearing all the weird facts, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.